Now, Greg Hardy is an interesting character. He is, in my opinion, he is by far the highest level, most accomplished athlete that ever crossed over in MMA. Like, we've already had a lot of guys who are high-level D1 college wrestlers. Even had an Olympic-level wrestler in, Chael Sonnen was like an alternate. I think Randy Couture was in the Olympics in Greco-Roman wrestling. Obviously Henry Cejudo. We've had college football players that ended up coming over. A few of those guys. We even had a guy like Brendan Schaub who made a pro NFL team, but I think it was like a practice squad, or he got cut early in the tryouts or something like that, right? So we've flirted with that caliber of athlete before. But when you're talking about Greg Hardy, okay, Greg Hardy from the Carolina Panthers, Greg Hardy from the Dallas Cowboys, this was an all-pro player. Okay, so when you're talking about an NFL caliber guy and then an all-pro, a guy who stands out, a freak amongst freaks as far as his athletic ability is concerned, right? And we all know about his past, right? So he ends up leaving the league, ends up coming over doing MMA. Now, interesting guy, because one of the debates has always been, what would happen if you took the caliber of athlete that you see going to the NBA or the NFL or professional soccer or baseball or something along those lines, that caliber of athlete, and then instead of training them their entire life in that sport, what would happen if they trained their entire life in a combat sport? Typically you don't see that, right? I mean, let's be honest with each other. Typically, especially in America, the best athletes, the people who have just the most raw genetic talent, people who are just freaks of nature, so to speak, and what they can do physically with no training whatsoever, they gravitate towards bigger, higher level sports, right? That's going to be basketball, football. Nowadays, you're looking at soccer. Baseball isn't quite as popular, but they'll go there. But the reason they go there it's simple, really twofold. One, those sports are way more popular. So when you're growing up in school, they're available. And two, if you're looking at it from a money perspective, a higher percentage of those athletes make more money, right? So really easy, right? It's not that difficult. And plus, it's like the wear and tear on your body. If you've got a chance of becoming an NBA player or even an NFL player versus fighting and things like that. So whatever. Anyways, my point is, we get back to Greg Hardy. So he comes over, and he's by far the highest caliber athlete that comes over. But fighting isn't just about being an athletic event, right? Obviously, it's a high level of skill that's involved in it too. So he comes over, and you see him. He's training at this top level gym, American Top Team. Comes out in these first fights, and man, he did not look good, right? You could tell he was a guy who did not know how to fight. It's different. You can be highly coordinated on the football field, run around, get from point A to point B, stop on a dime, change directions, accelerate, launch your body through the air to tackle somebody. You can do all of those things and do them at the absolute highest level, which is what he did. Fighting is different. It's a different skill set, and he wasn't trained in that. You could see he came out there and his balance was off. He looked awkward. He didn't know about space and distance. And the UFC matched him up, right? Okay, they knew what they had on their hands, and they want the guy to, they're trying to give him some publicity. They want to make some money off of him. So it's not like they just threw him in there with a top 10 guy just to see him get his head knocked off. They knew that he wasn't ready for that, so they matched him up in a way that was going to allow him to grow, allow him to get some wins, keep him on TV and things like that. And whatever, that's what a promoter's job is. Boxing does it a lot too. So nothing wrong there. But here's the thing. You can see that he's progressed a lot in like 2 years, maybe 3 years, something like that. He has progressed a lot. Now you go to this fight last night. Now you remember he's coming off this loss to Volkanov. Okay, but Volkanov was a very high level striker. Okay, do I think he's going to win the belt or anything like that? Do I think he's, going to give Ngannou or, Stipe or somebody like that a run for the money? No, I don't. Right, but Volkanov, we still have to admit where he's at. He's still a high-level guy, and his striking especially is still high level. So you look, and he comes off that loss, Greg Hardy, right? It was his first loss as a professional. Gets a little bit of a whooping. Sees when he gets in over his head exactly what that looks like and stuff, because before he had been putting it on guys for the most part, other than when he got caught in that one fight where he got disqualified. I think it was like his second or his third pro fight. But then you see him, so he comes in here last night. And right away you notice, same as all the other fights, he's still progressing. His skill level's higher. You see those leg kicks he was landing? He gets those things off nasty, and he generates a massive amount of power with them. Okay, Yorgan, his opponent last night, his leg was swelling up in the first round. Okay, the very first round. Now, Greg Hardy's got some flaws still, don't get me wrong, and there's some big ones. And it's why he was getting caught with some big shots last night. For example, pulls out with his head back still. Keeps his chin up a little bit too much. Doesn't transition well between offense and defense. Okay, and a lot of that stuff doesn't really surprise me based off of his experience level, right? But, and it definitely doesn't surprise me that he's more developed offensively than defensively. That's just gonna come more naturally, right? So all of those things make perfect sense. And to be honest, when you look back at last night's fight, Yorgan ended up injuring his foot when Hardy checked a kick, which was really funny because in his post fight interview, Hardy said he's like, yeah, I was starting to get torn up with those leg kicks. My leg was hurting, and all of a sudden I heard DC mention, Hardy needs to start checking those kicks. So I thought, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna start checking the kick, and as soon as he started checking one, Yorgan ended up hitting it right. I think it was like right on the ankle or right on the top of the foot. He injured his foot. Completely changed the game plan. Basically put his hands in his pockets, stopped throwing punches because he probably couldn't generate off the foot, get any momentum, things like that. Maybe he was worried about closing the distance with how much taller Hardy was. He wouldn't be able to generate enough power off that foot, and that was going to put him in a bad distance, and he was going to get caught. I mean, either way, long story short, Yorgan looked really good in the first round till he injured his foot, and then in the second and the third, it was just an incredible amount of inactivity, and Hardy wins. Okay, so it's not so much that he got the win last night that I'm looking at. I'm looking at how he actually looked in that fight. He was generating a lot of power. His balance is there. He's starting to show his athletic ability inside of the octagon. We always used to see it on the football field. Now he's showing his athletic ability as a fighter inside the octagon because his technical skills are coming up higher and higher. They're getting raised to the point where it's allowing himself to show his athletic ability. Like I said, those kicks, the punches, he throws combinations, and that's hard for guys a lot of times. A lot of times you see guys, even guys who have a pretty good skill level, they won't throw combinations, right? They'll throw single shots. Okay, it's one of the things that you definitely have a hurdle to get over in your evolution as a striker. Okay, he's doing it pretty early on. Okay, don't get me wrong. Sometimes he leaves himself in bad positions. I don't like the way some of the distance that he'll keep himself at. Sometimes he throws a little wide. He's got flaws. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination suggesting that he doesn't. But where's he going to be in another 3 fights, 4 fights, 5 fights if he keeps progressing like he is? And you got to remember the gym that he's at. He's getting some of the best training in the world. An American Top Team. I think Greg Hardy, he's been putting the division on notice. He started out as a joke, started out as somebody that nobody was really taking serious, as though he was like some kind of sideshow that he wasn't going to be able to step up. I think we're seeing that that's not the case. I think we're seeing that he's taking it as serious as you can take it, and his skills are progressing accordingly. So we'll see what the future holds. I mean, don't get me wrong. You throw him in there with Gano right now, he's getting his head torn off. He's not standing up to that, but who knows where he'll be when the time comes. If he keeps winning and progressing, when the time comes for him to answer that call, he may not be the man we know today. So I think he's put the division on notice that he is a force to be reckoned with, and that he wants to stick around, that he's got a future.